Hello and welcome to another episode of the VR Download, a weekly show recorded live from the Upload Virtual Studios, where we bring you the latest news, reviews, comments, and interviews from the VR industry. My name is Kyle, Operations Manager at Upload, and let's check out the rest of today's panel.
Hello, I'm Jamie. I'm the senior editor in the UK, and I have an American visa so that soon I can be a senior editor in the US too, as of this week. Look at me.
Very cool.
Yay.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Ian Hamilton here, managing editor. Welcome.
Let's just first say hello to everyone watching. I'm doing the comments this week. I'm not very good at comments, so if I forget every once in a while, please forgive me, guys, but we really appreciate you being here. So hello to Kev Gret. It's good to see you again. Hello, Danny B, joining for the first time today. Thanks for being with us, man. Or lady. Danny, either way, I don't know. See, I'm terrible at these. Creature 101, nice to meet you. Rendered Reality, hey, how's it going? Hello, James. Warren. Well, loads of people. Hello, Xena. Wait, no, you're a ghost. You shouldn't be here. Anyway, let's move on.
All right. This will be fun to edit. All right. So let's get into the news discussion. And this week, we've got a few pieces to talk about. So the first piece we want to talk about is this new Samsung Odyssey. It's got 4 cameras. It was spotted in a Chinese design patent. Now, it doesn't necessarily make it a real product yet, but it's there. And it looks like something from the movie The Fly. It has also been described as looking similar to certain women's attire.
Also bought. People talk about butts too.
Yeah,
It looks
and
like a
also, yeah.
Some people think that. Yeah.
Wow, I have a really good feeling about this headset, guys.
Well, what do we
People
know about
want it to look really space age, right? They want it like some of these headsets. They can be kind of bland looking, and it's fun to make them kind of weird looking. Yeah,
Acer had a really weird looking Windows VR one, didn't they? With like all these panels at different angles on it. It looked very kind of retrograde, which is pretty cool. We don't know a lot about it though, right? It literally just is this patent. It was quite a surprising thing to see because I think we'd all assumed that Samsung had kind of not given up on VR, but was putting it to one side for a while it focused on AR, right? Would you guys agree with that?
I don't know because
tough.
Yeah, go ahead, Ian. You go first.
Well, yeah, sorry. It's just OLEDs. I mean, Samsung has sort of the market leading OLED displays, so they can display blacks in the headset really well. And yeah, I took Ghost Cena's spot. No, it's they've got the OLED display technology, which allows them to display really, really good visuals, particularly in dark scenes. So, like, if you're going through the mines in Arizona sunshine, those look really, really great on Samsung panels. And so there's a really good sort of argument to be made that Samsung could do a really good media viewer headset or a headset that really gets those visuals that people really desire when it's in dark areas. So there's a reason for Samsung to sort of demonstrate it and focus on what they can do with their technology that others can't with LCDs.
Yeah, I think just because Samsung's relationship with Oculus / Facebook has evolved, changed, it doesn't mean that Samsung is like, well, forget this. We're not going to do VR anymore, AR or whatever. I think that they have a good chance of being a strong presence in the market. I mean, if you look at the Odyssey Plus, in my opinion, it's one of the better headsets I own. And I'm not a big fan of the Windows MR controllers, but I think seeing Samsung with patents like this, however old this is or if it'll ever actually be a thing, I think it's promising to have a big name like that in the industry making a headset.
And I don't know about, back to the comment about AR is still very much a couple years away, at least, in order to expand the field of view to a really comfortable level, in order to get the power consumption down so that you can actually wear the things all day and do the occlusion so that objects actually look like they're hidden in the real world. All those things are still years away, and so I don't know if Samsung can really do AR just like anyone else can really do AR in a really compelling way short term. So it's kind of there's a reason
rendered
for them
reality
to do
makes a good
VR
point. Like like back on the VR side, he says that he or she says, I need to get my pronouns right this episode. They would love to see Samsung come out with a new VR headset. I'm hoping they branch out and get away from the Windows mixed reality platform, which is a really interesting point, I think. Is this, if they are going forward with something like this, is it something that runs on the Windows OS again, or is it going to be a Steam VR headset? Or, I mean, if it's using the inside-out tracking, it's not going to be a fully Valve endorsed thing, surely. But I don't know. They could go in so many different ways with this one.
It's a really fair point because there's a lot of value to Samsung in making sure that no one dominates the platform war that's coming with VR. So like it's really valuable for Samsung to partner with multiple companies and multiple platforms to make sure that there's competing companies and competing platforms, and they're not getting, railroaded by like people from one company being able to dictate prices for their components. If you have multiple companies sort of competing, it really helps Samsung.
Competition drives quality. That's a very common phrase, and I think it's important to have a lot of big players, like well-known brands and names too.
I mean, that's why I do hope this is something they're going to go forward with. Personally, I was actually someone, I love my Rift S. That's what I'm wearing right now. But I was someone that was really hoping the Vive Cosmos was going to be something that could replace it. Just that I was willing to pay just a bit more to get a little bit extra visual fidelity and everything like that. But it didn't really work out that way, I don't think. And I would really like to see, especially now that we have the Quest, right? I would like to see Samsung come out with a PC VR headset that was at a decent price, push things on a bit over the Rift S, because thanks to Oculus Link, as we say, week in, week out, there's not a whole lot of reason to buy a Rift S at the moment. So I personally am.
Some people are screaming in the comments, I'm sure, because.
Oh no, what have I said?
Yeah.
What did I do?
No, it's just there is an argument to be made that Rift S. I mean, Facebook argues that it's the best visual quality that they have right now.
Yeah, but not by a huge margin, right?
Still, to some people, that margin will matter.
That's
what
true.
I'm saying.
That's fair enough.
Like if we could just get a different headset or a different head strap, like if I could take this head strap and put it on my Quest, I would start to agree with you.
Yeah, well, that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
That gets to the next steps that we hope to see from Facebook. Like I think they would be. I think there's a real opportunity to do a Quest Pro sooner rather than later and get it up to 90 or 80 frames per second, balance it out better, maybe do better audio where it's, the index off-ear speakers, and put a battery pack or put some computing on the back of the headset. All those things can be done pretty, yeah.
I think it's a missed opportunity. I think all of these manufacturers, and I've said this before, I just don't know in what medium, why not make the headset itself, this part, modular, and the head strap, and have different options? That way you can go and try. Like some people like this form and some people like that. That way you don't have to have a know-all, say-all. Well, this is the only strap you can get.
That was kind of
the Cosmos,
sort of what the Cosmos wanted it to be, right? It just ended up being that the Cosmos was like $600 or $700, I forget which, and then there was like the first add-on for it, the Steam VR tracking add-on, was an extra $200, and all that did was walk you back to Steam VR tracking if you wanted it that way. And it was like, well, why wouldn't? So it was, and they never came through with a phone thing, or at least they haven't yet. But I agree. I think that's a really, really smart way of doing a PC VR headset, and it would just be really nice if Samsung did that, or someone did that.
And if you created a standard, imagine having the ability to say, okay, I'm going to put my head strap on, which headset am I going to stick to it? And that way, when you go to upgrade, you're only upgrading that component, because you don't ever have to upgrade your head strap. It's static. Do we have any comments?
Yeah, Creature 101 was asking what our thoughts on PSVR are. I think we all like, apart from me, and we all like PSVR. I do think PSVR would be an interesting headset to.
It's the tracking. That's stupid tracking. I like turning around, darn it. I'll say it every week. This is fantastic. I love this. Whoa, I can turn around. PSVR.
What if towards the end of the, we talk a lot on the show and on the website at the moment about how PSVR has kind of like some let's say quieter days ahead of it, probably, while we wait for the PS5. What if Sony kind of went official with the PC VR support, because some people have been able to make it happen. But what if they came in with a more streamlined way, and then you could get a PC VR headset that also works on your PS4 for, let's say, well, you can find them for about $200 these days. That could be quite interesting.
We talked about that previously of like, who does that benefit the most? And I don't know if it benefits Steam to add that support, and I don't know if it benefits Sony to add that support. I just don't know if there's enough benefit there to each of them.
There's a rumor, right, that Horizon Zero Dawn, a big PlayStation 4 exclusive game, is going to come to PC, and that's something that quite a lot of people have heard now. So that would mean then that by extension, if you had PSVR running on Steam or something, Sony could bring Blood and Truth to Steam or something like that. Could bring Astrobot to Steam.
That goes back to the argument of like, I think we need to see unexpected team ups this year in 2020. So like, true. I still want to see that. It's just, I don't know what the arrangement of those team ups look like or whether they'll actually come to fruition. It's just,
well, I think it all depends. Is it the expansion of the audience or the almighty dollar that drives people right now in this industry? I think that's an important piece. Hey, let's move on to the next piece of news, which is about The Walking Dead Saints and Sinners. It looks like a crouching hotfix has been released. So for all of you folks who were hoping to be able to
going on?
Do something basic like this,
there we go.
You're going to be able to do it now
without just pressing
with this hotfix. Oh, you just want to push a button? That's not fun. That's not immersive.
No. It was the other way around. So when the game released, you had to push a button to crouch, and if you tried to crouch in real life, the game would kind of reset the camera back up here.
Now, why do you think they built it that way? Why do you think they built it that way?
Possibly platform agnosticism, or possibly the camera that they were using, or the model that they were using for the player had some restrictions based on other features they need. There's all sorts of potential reasons why they would have done it. I mean, who knows? Different like height of people, like to But I mean, then again, maybe they had a bunch of people test it, and that's what they wanted.
I
always wonder if like they put that feature in there to protect themselves if they want to ever do a flat screen version of the game. I don't know, like that's such a VR specific title.
I wrote an editorial this week saying that actually Walking Dead is one of the first or one of a growing number of PC VR games that I don't think you actually really could pull off on flat screen. And so it could be that, Ian, but then at the same time I don't really think you're going to be able to play The Walking Dead Saints and Sinners well with either just a normal gamepad or, let's say you try to play them with Oculus Touch without the headset. I don't think that's going to work, because I think, the depth perception and the feeling of force is so important to what makes that game fun. I think if you took those things out, it'd be a pretty bleak experience, I think.
Have we seen anybody do? Oh yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to go back over to the comments. Some of the guys have been talking about like the Amazon 5G service that was announced this week, and how that could do some interesting things for like wireless and VR, which I think is a pretty interesting thing to be talking about. Me, Heaney, and Zena will be going to Mobile World Congress in Barcelona in February, and that's always in Barcelona.
Barcelona?
Yeah, there.
You haven't seen that NerdWallet commercial? I see that like 800 times.
I'm in the UK. We haven't seen the same commercials.
Oh, okay.
Did you see the ET commercial?
That's usually a show that's really big on 5G.
We saw that one. So that was a UK
I'll be
commercial.
Checking that out. Are you two still talking about commercials?
Yeah.
E.T.
We moved on.
Okay.
Come on. E.T. wearing an Oculus.
E.T. wearing an Oculus product. E.T.'s on Facebook, apparently. Had to sign into his account.
What? Oh, this is dreadful. No more jokes about E.T. No more. It's 2020, and we're doing a VR podcast. No one can joke about E.T. anymore.
So if you disagree with Jamie, leave it in the comments.
E.T. is a great person.
A lot of love for Saints and Sinners in the comments, though. Rendered Reality really likes it. Someone, Chris Richardson, says they tested Saints and Sinners. It was designed to be a seated experience, which is an interesting comment. And that's true, because the game is coming to PSVR as well, and maybe they were designing with that in mind as well in the first place. I think one thing I tweeted this week was that, or last week maybe, was that when you as VR reviewers, we are learning day by day, just as much as other people are. And yeah, me and David loved The Walking Dead. We found loads of stuff we really, really liked with it. And I picked up on the crouching thing. David picked up on the crouching thing, but we were just having such a good time with the rest of the game. We never really considered it to be important to mention in a review or anything like that. And then, you look at the first couple of days of response online, that was an incredibly important feature to someone. So I think it's a lesson for me and David and developers as well, and anyone that's into VR criticism to really try and take just yourself out of the experience and remember like the massive range of options you have to accommodate for in VR, and how something that might annoy you slightly is really going to annoy some other people, and it's a tricky thing to get right. But
It's
I'm glad this seems to have got like a pretty quick
fascinating to put
fix.
that in context of Boneworks too, right?
Yeah.
Boneworks it seems like Boneworks was on a different like scale of rollout, like just the number of reviews they had, how quickly, and still their reviews were incredibly positive via Steam. We gave it a 4 out of 5, just like Walking Dead got 4 out of 5. But that same thing where like a lot of people just have great, steel stomachs that don't get sick, and
Yep.
that's not an issue to sort of accommodate necessarily. And there's a lot of people that took the headset off immediately, right? That within 5 minutes of Boneworks, it's like, I don't need to review it. I'll come back when they add more comfort options, and their reviews aren't reflected in the sort of mass voting.
Yeah.
I have to share this with you guys and with our audience, is that whenever I get a new game and I'm kind of iffy on whether I'm having a good time, what I typically do is I have my 14-year-old daughter jump in and play it after I do. Let her give me any feedback or comments that she's made, and then I go play it again with her perspective in mind. And it does give me a little bit different of an angle, a perspective. It's intriguing. I try not to pass judgment until I've played it after hearing somebody else's comments. And that's just my process.
But
Yeah.
David and Jamie, they're the main reviewers, and like we talk internally about how we're feeling and responding to things, but it's one of those things in our reviews where we try to make sure the reviews represent a single perspective, right? Like, and we reflect that. That's why it carries a single byline. Sometimes we debate these things internally, but like, it's one of those things we try to respect, where like one person's perspective, it could be completely different than another person's, and it can frustrate readers from time to time when they think that they're 5 out of 5, in their opinion it's a 5 out of 5 game, gets a 3 out of 5 from our particular reviewer. It's a tricky thing to kind of get those perspectives and represented fairly.
The other thing we really tried to do with our reviews when we refreshed the site last year was add in optional new sections where we talk about things like comfort and like differences between versions of games, because those can be really, really important to people, but also they might not be fairly indicative of what we're going to give the game as a score at the end of a review. So it's very important to me to always lay out in a kind of non-judgmental way what comfort options a game will offer, for example, because I think for some people, they need to know if there's going to be like a smooth or artificial locomotion option. To me, if a game is making me use teleport or smooth locomotion, I'm just going to get on board with it either way. I think I've rarely leveled that as a complaint at a game, I don't think. But you just have to, I think for us, it's important to just get all that information out there to you guys so that you know and can make a decision off of that based on your own preferences. Whereas I won't, unless I think it's really troublesome to the inherent design of the game, I won't downgrade or upgrade a game based on its comfort options.
I think that's we need to figure out what hardware is an entirely different animal, entirely different subject to deal with, and IPD adjustment ends up being such a dramatic comfort issue. And then we're also talked about fitting. You talked about the different, like, if you've got such a great strap for your head, maybe you could do the other components as interchangeable. It makes perfect sense. But like, the hardware is so hard to review because you can't represent the range of face shapes, but just one person reviewing it's such a different thing than the comfort options in a piece of software to say, like, I can't wear this headset for more than 15 minutes without getting a splitting headache.
Yeah.
It's such a different animal, I guess. And
Mm.
I still have yet to. We need to get more people to try the reverb on our team, because the reverb was not fitted for my face, and I just couldn't bring myself to put together cohesive thoughts because of how it fit my face.
Mm-hmm.
Just going back to the comments, Paradise DK said that what The Walking Dead really needs is like an editor mode, which I think is a very good point. I think people really want to have a mode to play around with in that game. Rendered Reality said that like physical crouching should be a standard in every VR game, I think is what he said. I can't scroll up, so I was paraphrasing a little. Forgive me if I got that wrong. A lot of people speaking up for like the need to have both physical crouching and then an option for people that don't want to do that. Because I mean, I'm 30 years old. No, I'm not. I'm 29 years old. How did I get that wrong? And even at this age, my knees hurt, man. When I crouch and stuff in games, it's painful. So I try and crouch when I can, but not.
I can't wait to see Alex. Can't wait to see how Alex handles all this, because
that's gonna be the big one, right?
And then comparing these three, right? Walking Dead, Boneworks, and then Alex, and comparing the way the three of them approached each of these issues is going to be a really telling thing for the next year of game design, because I think all three of those games are going to inform what we see by the end of 2020 and early 2021.
Yeah, for sure. Shadow Killer, no, we can't control our eyes. They just look where Facebook tells them to look.
Right. Well, no. Eye tracking. We'll tell we need eye tracking next. Just out of curiosity, are there any zombie games where you play a zombie and try not to get killed?
Not in VR, I don't think. There might be. That's a good question, actually.
Somebody make that, please.
What was it? We had some similar idea where, we were talking about that, but is it I can never remember asymmetrical or asynchronous, but like a game where you could play a zombie on one platform and a human on another platform. Like that would be such an interesting combination.
I think that's asynchronous. But yeah, that would be cool. Yeah, that's the kind of stuff that's really cool in VR as well, right? Like that kind of co-op multiplayer or competitive multiplayer, different screens, can be a really, really interesting thing. Sam Maheo says he's 16 and his knees often hurt when he crouches as well. So, yeah, I feel your pain, Sam. Also, you're meant to be practicing for an essay right now, a politics essay, I believe, and we respect you being here. Something about Brexit. I didn't read that bit out.
Brexit, what's that?
Subject of the politics essay is how VR will affect politics in the 21st century. You're good to go.
Yeah, he's doing research. Well done.
Don't forget to use the word democratization.
Yep.
Okay, let's move on to the next piece of news. Unity now supports Vulcan on the Oculus Quest, which is really cool because it could lead to more graphical details on Quest games or larger worlds or better battery life. It's kind of amazing to have a different API, different render platform that can allow for low-powered chips to do more stuff, use less power, keep more battery. It's all good stuff. Ian, what do you know about this?
Yeah, just there's a big wave of Unity news this week, right? With the other big
update
bit being Steam and deprecating their integration with Steam, and Valve working on a new route to get Steam integration into Unity. And anything that improves the battery life or performance, like I really hate the fixed foveated rendering on the Quest. And anything that sort of lets developers dial down how much they're activating their fixed foveated rendering is a big step forward for comfort.
I mean, Red Matter on Quest, that it's like kind of a other planet exploration game. That game for me really set the bar for visuals on Quest. That has a lot of really great lighting work going on, lots of really detailed reflections. I don't think it's quite up there with the PC VR version for obvious reasons, but it's really, really close, and it's a really impressive piece of work. And since playing that game, going into the Quest versions of other like PC VR games and stuff, you kind of get this feeling of kind of hollowness in some of them, or like they've obviously lost their sheen in some ways. So I think anything that can really help, especially going into this year and Quest going from the the exciting new platform into having to deliver on content in some important ways. I think anything that can help developers make those extra steps, like Red Matter did, is really, really important, right?
Absolutely. I mean, anything that they can do to, again, increase battery, increase graphic quality, and just be able to do things faster. I mean, some of the load times are a little,
Yeah, that was the
you're
other
sitting
big
in
thing.
limbo,
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, the first thing you don't want to. The first thing you do into VR is to put on the headset and then wait 30 seconds to actually have your opening menu loaded.
Yep.
You don't really want to do that for users, and Vulcan should help with that.
Yeah, for sure.
Mhm.
Yeah, James was just saying that he thinks Red Matter was made in Unreal, but didn't actually end up taking advantage of Vulcan, which is really, really interesting.
I thought they had
But
their
yeah,
own engine or
Unreal,
something like that.
Unreal's done really well on Quest, hasn't it? I think they managed to squeeze all of Robo Recall onto Quest somehow, which was quite impressive. So yeah, we'll see. Quest really has to start. It's been a really good year of content for Quest so far, but it's mainly been like living off these kind of slightly watered down ports, and I really want to see it like pick up steam this year with that stuff.
Yeah, can you talk about your editorial, the Getting to Grips editorial? Because I thought that was such a valuable look at how PC VR and Quest VR differ. And Heaney has a story up this morning talking about Quest and all the comments that Facebook has said about adoption and sales of their headsets. Because, to be clear, Facebook has said nothing about the actual unit sales for any of their consumer devices. Back in the DK1, DK2 era of developer kits, Facebook or Oculus made charts, boards, where they displayed all the countries that their development kits were shipping to. They said that, how many tens of thousands of each of those dev kits were actually out into the market. But as soon as they made the switch over to Gear VR and Oculus Go, Gear VR has numbers out there, but those were provided by Samsung. And those numbers are pretty misleading because a lot of those headsets were given away for free.
Yeah.
So when you say that there's 5 million Gear VRs out there in the world, a very small percentage of those Gear VRs are actually in use.
I mean, I think
on
I
a
was
regular
given
basis
two.
by people.
I think I got 2 Gear VRs for free over the course of the Gear VR years. So yeah, I totally agree with you there. Yeah, no, it's good that you bring up that editorial. Kevgret says that Beat Saber, Pistol Whip, and Audica don't seem watered down on Quest to him, and that's very true. But those games are designed in specific ways that actually complement that platform very well. They're not the most, I think you guys would agree, they're not the most visually intense experiences, right? They're very stylistic experiences. Pistol Whip, I'm the one that mentions it this week. Pistol Whip is a gorgeous, gorgeous game, but it's a very stylistic game, right? It's not.
New track out next week for Pistol Whip. Thanks for bringing it up.
But so what I'm talking about, Kev, Gret, and co, is that this editorial that I wrote, this was just like one part of it, but games like Boneworks and The Walking Dead, and we assume in a couple of months Half-Life Alyx, are charting this kind of new path for VR development at the moment. I really feel that we're learning how important physics in virtual worlds are to really grasping what VR can do that traditional games can't. So the whole thing about The Walking Dead, it's quite significant for me because The Walking Dead is something usually these days as a franchise I actively avoid because I'm just so bored and fed up with it. But the use of physics in this game is so impressive, and unlike anything else I've played, outside of VR, that it's just really, really compelling, and I can't see myself going back from it in other VR games now, basically. But it's an intensive thing, having a world filled with objects you can pick up, and different levels of sharpness in different blades and different enemy types that you can hack different bits off of and stab them in different parts and then throw them into a horde of other enemies. That's a lot to ask of a machine to put into VR, right? And the thing is, as good as Quest has been for its first year, how is it going to get there in the next couple of years? We don't know. It might not. I mean, there's a spin-off of Boneworks coming out to Quest, and that's going to be a real big showcase of what Quest can do on the physics front, I think. And there's a Quest version as well of The Walking Dead coming out, and that's going to be really interesting to see what kind of cuts and concessions they have to make to get it on the platform there. but it just creates this really, really interesting thing because, you know, we all know now that Quest is going to be probably the leading headset for probably the next 2 or 3 years, right? Until probably won't get any serious consumer viable competition, maybe until PSVR 2, unless there's another standalone we don't know about. And yet, is it going to be the case that even though it's the best selling, most important VR headset on the market, are all the games that are actually proving what VR can do and pushing the genre or the platform or the medium forward only going to be showing up on PC VR where not many people are for the next couple of years? It's a really,
Yeah.
really interesting conundrum that I think I'm really hoping we'll be able to see what this piece of kit can do by the end of the year for, you know, yeah.
Don't you
Carl.
think though that the link cable for the Quest answers that question of I can still do my mobile stuff, but if something comes out that's too powerful to be on mobile by itself, you
Yeah,
just jack into the computer.
which is great, right? And I love Link. I think it's fantastic. But that then just takes the whole mainstream market thing away from Quest, right? You can't have games that are exclusive to that PC environment. They don't really count as Quest games. You know, my grandma might buy a Quest if I, you know, show her something that really amazes her, but then I'm not going to be able to get her to go on and then buy the PC to go with it, right? So,
But she won't want to because she's not going to be that type of player. The link cable satisfies the folks who want that extreme, high performance, top tier experience. Grandma isn't going to want that. I
totally.
mean, that's
But
just my opinion.
yeah, no, and I do see where you're coming from, but to me, like we're talking about, you know, not to sound too hyperbolic, but we're talking about the first VR games that are going to, you know, in 10 years from now, be viewed as what really started leading us down the path to what makes VR content so
Mhm.
immersive and important, right? And
Mhm.
so, as great as it is, like I can't go back now to games that have like kind of Wii style waggle melee, which is what Quest might only be getting for the next year if in a sword fighting game or whatever. We don't know yet. We have to see.
Here's every Quest game for the next year.
But Saints and Sinners is coming to Quest, as I said earlier. So we'll just have to see how that goes. I talked to developer Skydance Interactive. They seemed pretty confident they could do a good job porting it, but we'll have to see. I'm going to be really, really
Yeah.
fascinated to see how that one
So
turns out.
Hmm?
what I want to mention here is that there's a genre of gamer, like, you know, there's a certain subcategory of people who are keying in. These are both from developers and from buyers. That the joy of VR is around being able to say, "Can I do this? Oh yes, I can."
Mm,
Like, to have that moment of surprise again and again and again with just trying something out and finding out that it works is absolutely, in my opinion, some of the most magical moments of VR. We saw it in
yep.
Boneworks. We're seeing it with some of these more finely tuned interactions. And it's what I'm complaining about so much with Go and track, you know, any limit to the tracking is a brick wall to trying something out and finding out that it doesn't work. So,
Mm,
like, that's why we want the best tracking possible, is so that when people get that in their head, can I do this? They actually can go and do that. And if the tracking isn't the best possible, they will hit a brick wall and they will not be able to do the thing that they wanted to do. And so there is this subcategory of people who want the biggest, best possible tracking, so that the one time in a week and a half that they decide they want to go walk over to, you know, grab something that's over there, it actually works when they do it. And a lot of these headsets are designed around, like, the argument that people just don't actually want to get up and walk across the room very often, so
yeah.
therefore why do we make the effort of designing this whole hardware system to let people do the thing they only do once every couple of days? But I think there's this other side of that argument where, when people want to do the thing that they want to do, the VR hardware better allow them to do it. And
Yeah.
then there's the argument that the software also needs to enable the people to do that thing that they want to do whenever possible. And there, we talk about hot dogs, horseshoes, and hand grenades being another example of this, like, virtual playground that has people spending hundreds of hours in it just because you get this thought in your head, I want to mess with this thing and do something odd, and lo and behold, I can do it. When you look at Minecraft and Stardew Valley, which I've been addicted to recently, everything you want to do in this world, you go. Can I go and grab this thing and put it over
Yeah.
here, and it works, and it's magical.
Yep. Yeah.
That's
No,
what that's VR needs to do better.
that is the magic of Boneworks, right? And that is the magic of what that's why Boneworks built so much hype up, because it was a game where trailers showed you getting a crowbar, hooking it over the side, and then climbing up the crowbar, or looking at like a wooden beam that was holding some items you wanted, and what do? You got a sledgehammer and just knocked away the beam, for example. And yeah, that's a really, really important strand of gaming right now that's going to become more important, I believe, in the next couple of years. And I guess it all boils down to, you know, Half-Life Alex is the most important VR game this year, probably for the next couple of years, maybe even. Oculus Quest is the most important VR headset, and they're not going to cross over for a long time, probably. Then
Wait,
that kind of
I mean,
fidelity on that headset is not going to cross over for a long
except
time.
over Oculus Link. But here's the other thing I wanted to get into, where Heaney has discussed this and outlined this idea that hopefully by OC7 we might see a Wi-Fi dongle that you can just plug straight into a USB port on your PC, and it will be the wireless version of Oculus Link and allow you to take that processing power of the PC and transmit it with very low latency over to the headset and have truly the best of both worlds. Because it is a bummer to have to go back to the tether in order to enjoy that low latency experience. And some people out there are able to withstand the virtual desktop or other methods of wirelessly streaming, but you need that first party built-in platform support to really decrease that latency as much as possible. And those people in the comments mentioning 5G, I want to see and feel how much added latency are actually provided by any of those 5G solutions, because it doesn't make sense. I don't understand how you can process all this data over in the data center a mile away, and why that would outperform having a very powerful GPU and CPU local to you and able to transmit over a very wide bandwidth connection to your local PC. I don't follow.
Yeah. The wireless, I think we're still a little ways off from that, but I do believe that once that happens, it will be revolutionary, game changing, like literally and figuratively.
Oh, sure. I think it's just a matter of are we going to see 5G make an impact on VR technology this year? I think that's unlikely, but I think it's more likely we could see a really great Wi-Fi based solution that pulls over. I mean, there's already some Wi-Fi based solutions or WiGig solutions.
Yeah, WiGig. Yeah.
Yeah, that do that locally with you. But it's just, this relates to another thing of alternative rendering routes, alternative ways to render the stuff on your headset. We have a patent that Heaney found where it showed the Oculus Quest carrying case used to transmit stuff to the headset, and it would reduce the bulk of the Oculus Quest headset. So it's a much lighter, smaller thing because you're offloading a bunch of the rendering to a nearby wireless device. And there's just so many things that could happen if a company like Valve or Sony or Facebook really works out local wireless at extremely high bandwidth and low latency. And everyone keeps mentioning 5G as yeah, we're going to do that over 5G from a mile away from your house. And it just seems more likely we're going to see better solutions inside your home in the near term.
Yeah,
I think so. Well, do we have any comments?
Yeah, everyone's very interested in the whole in the wireless angle. People are calling out a lot of the different solutions we've seen so far today. HTC's recently launched take on the Vive Focus Plus with PC streaming to that. That's something we haven't been able to test ourselves out, but that's a very interesting one. HTC's own wireless adapter. Again, another modular bit for the Cosmos, like we were talking about earlier. What else have we got? Chibi says Shadow PC is used for VR a lot with virtual desktop with no issue depending on location. But if 5G gets up and going from Amazon worldwide, it would make the routes and speed it gets to that data center astounding. So everyone's kind of holding out on 5G, which is really, really interesting. Yeah, watch
Okay.
this space, I guess.
Good stuff. Well, let's move on to the next piece of news here. It looks like Valve had to correct their December Steam hardware survey because it was okay. And I'm hoping one of you two is going to be able to explain this. It was skewed by too many China users.
So,
and as a result, some of the numbers are changed. And we can get into the details after you explain it.
So I might hear a voice in my second saying that I'm explaining this wrong, but China this month on the Steam hardware survey, it looked at first before this update as if there wasn't a massive growth, or even I think it might have even been there was like a dip in VR usage overall. The thing was there was a huge growth in China-speaking Steam users that this month. All added to the survey, inflating the numbers across the entire board. But of course, I think now, again, this is where Heaney might correct me. The problem is you can't get these headsets in China. So Chinese speaking Steam users, for the most part, can't use these headsets. So it's not really fair to compare them like that. And so I think what happened was Steam then came in this month, later this month, took those numbers back down to make it much more a much better, more rounded reflection of how many people on Steam are actually using these headsets. Was I right, Heaney? Yes,
Okay.
I got yes. Woohoo!
I want to explain the differences in the survey. So, according to after the change, it now shows that the Rift S is 0.06% increase. The Index is 0.02% up. The Rift CV1 is 0.01% up, and somehow or another, the Windows mixed reality headsets is down 0.01%. Now
Yeah.
these are tiny changes,
You know,
percentage wise.
In the
you know,
scope
cool,
of
Heaney, is I would love to display those charts because these numbers are only useful if you put them in the context of every month of our history of tracking, and
Yeah,
then you
Right.
can
that's
start
true.
seeing where they all stack up relative to one another. And we've got that. You know, Heaney is out there tracking those numbers
I'd be
month to month.
I'd be
Yeah.
curious to know what that means in volume, not percentage, because these numbers, hundredths of a percent, is just of
Well,
all
yeah,
Steam users, right?
so of course when you're talking about everyone that uses Steam, of course those changes are going to be very, very minute in the VR charts, right? Because it's not a huge number of people on Steam using those things,
Mhm.
and month to month those aren't going to shift very dramatically unless tomorrow Oculus started, had a rift cannon and was just firing rifts out into the cities for free. That's the only way that those would change significantly over the month, and then you wouldn't even see them change that much, I bet. But in terms of the Windows VR, I think that's obviously going down because availability of those headsets is really falling now, and I think anyone that bought some of the earlier ones probably doesn't have much interest in using them anymore. I could be very wrong about that, but if you
No, I
bought
think
an
that's
Acer
probably
headset,
right. Yeah.
yeah,
I'm curious about headset spoofing, I guess, or improperly identified Steam VR headset. So you plug in something not a Rift, but it shows up
Well,
as a Rift. Is it
yeah,
possible that
quests,
that kind
right?
of thing is
Quests
happening?
show up in Steam as Rift S's in the little Steam window. It looks like it's got the cameras or the shape of a Rift S rather than the shape
Mm-hmm.
of a Quest. And I'm sure
but
that might come up
in
as
this
a.
in this
Well,
story that
Heaney
he
says that the hardware survey checks USB,
yeah.
but I did. Yeah,
In
sorry, go
his
ahead.
story, he wrote that some people are reporting that when they kind of do the survey or whatever, they're getting something saying, I think it's like headset not detected or no device detected. So it might even be that Oculus Link users aren't actually being registered on Steam yet. I don't know. It's
So I want to mention, okay, so this is really frustrating for us as reporters because we've also got Super Data out there pushing numbers, explaining what they think are the estimates of how many headsets are sold. And we're on the other side of this trying to grasp onto as solid numbers as we can possibly get. and it's just really, really, really difficult.
Yep.
And it affects developers deciding what platforms to support, and it's just so frustrating because it really benefits only Valve and only Oculus to keep those numbers to themselves. It's such like it's such a self-serving thing for them not to be uh, more upfront with the developer community and more upfront with the consumers buying these headsets to say, you're actually on a headset platform that isn't well supported. Like, you bought a headset or you're thinking about buying a headset that doesn't have that many other people out there in the market to share your experience with. That affects purchasing decisions, it affects development decisions, and people out there really need stronger, better numbers to hold on to than super data giving their guesstimates every quarter that could be an order of magnitude off in some cases. And it's really disappointing.
I think Facebook will announce a Quest number this year once it's passed a very surprising and encouraging milestone. And then
Yeah,
they'll
I
suddenly
agree.
act like they're super, super open and welcoming and really positive for the community. And they'll act like they've been doing it all along. And we'll be like, well, actually, for the last 5-6 years or whatever, you actually haven't. You've been completely quiet. But I think maybe even on Quest's first birthday or at Oculus Connect 7, if that's going to happen this year, I'm pretty
F8.
sure it will. I think, or F8, yeah, that's another great point. Like, imagine Mark Zuckerberg comes out in the first 10 minutes and, with that lovely, iconic smile he has, he says, and that's because this year we sold 2 million Quests, and everyone takes their t-shirts off and goes wild. I think that's what they'll do. Maybe not the t-shirt.
I like the 2 million number. Yeah, I like you tossing out the 2 million number too, because that's what my heart wants to hear too.
Yeah, I
hear
feel
2
like
million.
if you said a million now, well, I don't know, maybe that's very ambitious. If you said a million now, everyone would be like, oh, I thought maybe it was a bit more. But then maybe we're just proving their point as to why they don't say anything about these numbers.
Yep.
But yeah.
I
Jay
don't know.
Lawson says
Yeah, go ahead.
he thinks they could possibly be at the 1 million mark. So maybe I'm wrong. Aaron says Super Data said Index outsold Rift S. They're high on something. I didn't read the last bit of that
Yeah.
before, but yeah, I think we maybe agree with you there, Aaron.
See, I feel like I could play devil's advocate and I could argue that it's valuable to the industry to not release real numbers. But I think that would just open up a huge debate between Ian and I, and then we don't have time for that. So let's just move on to our final piece of the news because we are dragging it on. I love it. The Oculus store sells $5 million worth of stuff on Christmas Day, and Facebook's non-advertising revenue year-over-year growth was driven by sales of Oculus Quest. I saw this chart, and it showed their Facebook's revenue, and then it had this little cap, this little icing on top of the cake of other, and you can see it year over year going up and increasing in value. Are we to assume then that the other is simply VR stuff?
That's it. That's it. Oculus Quest saved Facebook from all its many millions of fines and debt. Not debt, but that's it. Finally, they're back. They're back on track after 5 years, right? Maybe. No, probably not.
The thing I love about that chart is it really underscores the overall need of Facebook to have VR be a success for them. Because to their point, to your point, Jamie, it's like their advertising section of that chart is 98% of the chart, and then there's this 2% of other.
Yeah.
And to be a stronger, healthier company that can weather whatever changes come in the future, whether it be new regulation or changing usage patterns, because I don't believe that their user numbers are really as strong as they claim. Like, I have not used Facebook in a real way in years.
Yeah, same.
Like, I don't post
Same.
stuff on there. And I think that's probably representative of hundreds of millions of people just not using Facebook the way they used to. But it still has a lot of eyeballs, and it still gets a lot of people to pay for advertising to reach those eyeballs. And so Zuckerberg says this all the time in his explanations of why he invests in VR is to be a stronger, healthier company, we need to grow the things other than advertising and do some of the things that, Apple makes all of its money off of, which is hardware profit.
I mean, maybe that number isn't indicative of just VR stuff.
Let's circle back to the argument you didn't want to have, but it
Okay.
does benefit Facebook not to detail this information, in my opinion, because the longer that they can, I mean, it's a complicated issue, but the longer that they can sort of slip into the tech industry and ship hardware that people love without too many other companies knowing the scale of the success, that actually benefits Facebook quite a bit in um, keeping competitors from rushing for their gold mine, more so, whatever, however you want to phrase it. But like, if Facebook has unlocked a gold mine in VR, it actually benefits them to keep other people from trying to compete with them. And so keeping those numbers and keeping it other and keeping it vague uh, helps them sort of obscure the level of success that they achieve.
Possibly. Any thoughts from the audience here?
Everyone is kind of having a lovely time talking to each other. It's actually quite nice to look at.
Well,
So
sweet.
not so
Good
much
job.
on the Facebook stuff, but yeah, Gamertag VR just joined. So hi to Gamertag, good to see you today. Earlier they all had a little tribute to Paradise DK, who was here earlier. I would like to, throw my hat in on that. Hi, Paradise DK. Always great to have you here. Always great to see you about the VR community.
Yep.
Everyone's very happy
Yep.
today. Everyone's just happy it's Thursday.
Do we have anything else to talk about for the? I mean, $5 million worth of Oculus store on Christmas Day. Now, I know that we all talked in the morning on Christmas Day. We're like, hey, there seems to be this incredible influx of traffic to our site, uploadvr.com. Check that. And it was amazing to see, like, we were all tired. It's like, is this the year? Is this the year where everybody opens VR for Christmas? I mean, we've been talking, I know I personally have, and I'm sure you guys have as well, been talking about that moment where people open VR and it becomes part of our world for Christmas. And I think we kind of saw a taste. We got a taste of that on Christmas Day. And if $5 million worth of software was sold on the Oculus store, imagine what that would have been if they had gift cards.
Yeah, that's what everyone says, right? I think that's a very interesting point. I would have gifted.
I want to throw out the other numbers. Superhot told us that they made $2 million over all the platforms Superhot was available on over a full week. So it's hard to compare the 5 million just for Oculus to the 2 million across all platforms. But I still want to suggest, and I think that maybe 5 to 7 games, maybe 3 to 7 games, probably got the majority of that $5 million. And one of those games was Beat Saber, which is probably the top game on the list. So, like, most of that money fed back to Facebook.
Here's an interesting point as well. Obviously, many of these quests and the quests that would have been making that money would have been unwrapped on Christmas morning and would have had that free code for the Vader Immortal trilogy, which is also worth $30 inside. Were Facebook sneaky? Did that count, or do you think it was? Do you think it was different?
Steve,
I'd like to be optimistic and think it didn't, but
yeah,
I find this number, this value of $5 million, to be not the right way to measure, because how many titles are free and were downloaded? How many people got the Quest, didn't have any money, and went and downloaded a dozen free things and did it? I want to see volume, not dollar amount. I want to know the quantity, not dollar amount.
I mean, we've kind of fallen for it because we've spoken about it very positively, but it is just, diversions from getting away from what we were talking about last topic, which is we want to know headset sale numbers and they don't want to tell us, so they come out with these other weird inflated statistics. They do it every Oculus Connect. They come out with at least 2 or 3 figures. Some of them are quite promising. Some of them you sit there for a second and think, what does that even
what does that mean? Right.
Really?
That's the thing. Like, we're playing in Facebook's, like, in both Steam and Facebook's situation, we're playing with their numbers, and they can really alter those numbers however they want. Like, Facebook is now talking about family. Like, they merged all their products, Instagram, WhatsApp, and the main Facebook Messenger, and so now they've got this story where they try to make it seem like they grow every single month, because it's like, it's like an engine. Like I don't know,
Yeah.
they need to prove that they're growing and grasping these eyeballs, and nobody else is grasping these eyeballs,
Yeah.
and they've got to keep making the numbers appear that they're growing, getting bigger and bigger, and it's just so misleading on so many different levels. Because if you go back to the Gear VR numbers, Mark Zuckerberg, there's that photo of Mark Zuckerberg walking through the Samsung crowd with all the people in Gear VR, so then he gets up on stage
Yeah.
and says there are something like 1 million people using VR each month.
Yep.
And you start thinking about that number and going, what does that mean? Are they watching 360 videos? Are they
Are they just in a
not paying
shopping
for
center and
content?
it was like they were walking past and Samsung like threw it on their head for like a 360 video commercial or something like that? Yeah, it's absolutely such a it's so ambiguous and frustrating in that sense. The other thing to that point is I think it was last earnings call, Facebook Zuckerberg said something along the lines of like VR is taking a little it's taken a little longer than we thought it would, and he said that kind of in the safety that now Quest is doing pretty well. And if you look back at all the many other financial calls they've done over the year, he would be saying it's taking as long as we expected. We always said this was going to be this long of a journey, and we were. Or Nate Mitchell famously said that expectations of everyone else apart from Oculus got ahead of themselves and stuff like that. And the further you get away from the past, the more the truth of the past kind of ekes out a bit in that sense. So it's an important reminder not to take everything they say on these calls and stuff at face value, I think.
At Facebook value. I love it.
Hey, that was actually pretty good. I'll pat you on the
Thank
back for
you.
that one.
Thank you. I felt that. Okay, so that's our news, and we've got some other conversations that we want to have, but let's get into very quickly release of the week. If we can do release of the week, Ian, did you play anything this week? Anything
Yeah,
new? Anything fun, exciting?
so right before I came over here, I was able to get my Oculus Link working. So I got sent a free cable to test from PartyLink. That's the cable that we tested a 3-meter version of right before the official Oculus Link cable. They went and built a nearly 5-meter version of the PartyLink cable, so it's a longer version of that cable, and it's a very weird experience. Unless people demand to know, the link for it, I don't want to send people to it just yet, because it's a 3.1 USB cable, which means I tried connecting it to the same port, the same USB-C port that I could connect the official Oculus Link cable to, and it doesn't work. But if I connect this 3.1 cable to the 2080, the RTX 2080 card, if I connect it to the USB-C on that card, this cable actually works. And so I was looking at the first reviews to come in from people who actually bought this cable on Amazon, and people are saying it doesn't work. So it's a complicated situation here to find out why it doesn't work. But I think it's probably because it's this 3.1 cable. Point is, I hooked up this new. It's half price. It's half price the price of the official Oculus Link cable. So it's a cool value in theory if it actually works for your system. So I hooked that cable up, and I did this right before I came over. And it was the coolest thing to be able to do this. First, I tried Orders of Magnitude, which is an early access title on Oculus Rift that I was able to test. And it's similar in a sense to Titans of Space, but it is more in line with the idea of, let's show you the different sizes of everything in the universe. So you start off with like an Earth scale, and you can zoom in all the way down to atom scale and get a sense of like every 5 seconds or something, the scale changes by magnitude, and you get to see the distance of space. It's like that scene in Ant-Man when he shrinks himself down into mini space, and you get the sense of space. So that was kind of cool. But what I did was
Sorry.
Yeah.
You got to use it
Quantum
the
realm.
right term.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Not mini space. I'm sorry.
Only science here.
But I did that over this Party Link Oculus Link cable, which was cool to sort of do an Oculus Link beta, so that I'm using beta software on Oculus Quest, and then I'm using an early access piece of software from Oculus, And then I unplugged the Oculus Link cable and went into wireless mode. And then I tried the T for God hand tracking demo that you just got the video up about, Jamie.
Once you get hands into most VR games, then you have no physical way of telling yourself to walk around an environment, right? So you go back to like early VR with something like Job Simulator, where you're not really moving, so that's the best way to play the game. And T for Gods doesn't have that issue because you're walking physically, and it's a lot of fun. It's really, it's just very, very strange, and I'm gonna have to like calibrate myself to VR all over again with it, basically. When you're walking around these environments fully immersed, and now the only thing really to tell me I'm not in another world is the weight on my Quest. As a way I used to have, the feeling like I've got now with controllers in my hands, and that's these touch controllers are amazing, and they try and get out of the way as much as possible, but they're still in my hands. I still know they're here. And
We've
then
been
for
here
something
more
like,
than an hour, and yeah, I'm feeling the weight in my hands is starting to get to me.
yeah, my biceps are bulging. Yep, there we go.
This is my new workout routine.
But actually, so yeah, no, it's really fun. It's very buggy. The entire thing is in a beta build, so it's completely free to check out. And you absolutely should if you want to go and see like an actual game using the hand tracking support in its very, very early state. It's you're going to wrestle with it as much as you are enjoy it, because there's going to be so many times you lose hand tracking, stuff like that. But ton of fun. Definitely go check that out if you have side quests and you're into side loading on Quest.
So it's cool to see a game, or to hear of a game, because I haven't played it yet myself, that has that directed walking type of situation. That's been around for a while. I actually tried that way back on an old World Viz headset back in like 2013,
Oh, okay,
2014. Yeah. And I walked around a big gymnasium. So my question is, this game T for Gods, would it make sense to go and try to play this on like a soccer field or a gymnasium? And would the bigger area provide a better experience?
That's a great question. I haven't been able to play it a bit on a bigger scale, but I think, and I could be very wrong about this, but I think the game accommodates for all different kinds of play space sizes. What I will say is conversely, I live in a tiny London flat where I'm often, fighting the walls as much as I'm fighting a virtual enemy. The design in this game is so tight and well considered that even just walking around in my tiny flat, I've never actually worried about like walking into a wall or coming up too close to something, and it's always steered me in the right direction. So I think wherever you're going to play it, you're going to have a great time, as long as you can, as long as you actually do have some room scale space.
Is this a coined term yet? Arena scale? Is that a term already?
I think so. That's something.
Facebook kind of coined that a little bit with their Dead and Buried demo at OC5, and I guess I'm glad you brought that up, because we're trying to do a story about that progress, because Facebook they showed that Dead and Buried demo 2 years ago now, and have basically provided no updates on the status of a co-location API, which would allow two quests in the same space to know where each of them are relative to each other. And it's a complicated issue because there's privacy considerations. You don't want the headsets to necessarily share maps with each other of the rooms, and then have developers or side-loaded developers downloading the geometry of your space and having a map of your living room. So they have to figure out how to make that work very securely. And there's other options. There's other people doing various ways of co-locating and getting that position of the various headsets. You can have two headsets link themselves up, manually. But bottom line is, there's a number of developers out there, 4 or 5 of them that I know of right now, who have these co-located experience in the offing, including Space Pirate Arena, which would be the sequel, or whatever you want to call it, to one of the first and best wave shooters in VR. And it allows you to have a game of tag almost in a space where you are running very, very fast around another player. And if you don't have an absolutely one-to-one play space, and you don't have the proper warning of just how far away. My very first my very first Vive demo, I remember the first time I interacted with Chaperone, I watched a person go into the Vive before me, and they walked up to the wall, and the Chaperone didn't activate quickly enough, and they almost hit the wall. They came within 2 inches of the wall, and from that point on, every time I interact in VR, I am more scared of walking into a wall. And
Mm-hmm.
to think that the Space Pirate Arena, people are running across rooms, you have to have such incredible boundaries and a real solid knowledge of just how dangerous what you're doing is.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, let's hope that Facebook and all these developers figure out how to do this co-experience in the arena scale. Let's hope that this technology isn't. Are you ready for it, Jamie? Let's hope that technology isn't dead and buried.
Oh, I really wish I hadn't laughed. Damn it.
Thank you.
Oh, awful.
No? Okay. All right.
Do you know, Kyle, our commenters are clairvoyant and Nostradamus. Is that what you say? Is that what his name is? The guy that's really good at telling the future? Anyway,
Nostradamus,
because
Somebody
in
else
the
made that.
comments we
Gave
have.
it the British pronunciation, Nostradamus. That's
Oh,
like
did they?
aluminium.
Oh, well.
Aluminium? Is that like
But
that?
I think it was Nostradamus.
Aluminium is the only way that word is said. Anyway, Eric Hartley says XR by definition is extended reality, and for some people it includes
no.
VR, virtual reality, and AR, augmented reality. MR by definition is mixed reality, and there are various interpretations. Now, why is he clairvoyant, Carl?
Because it is time for our hot topic of the week. And I hope you are all strapped in and ready for this conversation. Ian, tighten your seatbelt, tighten your head straps, because here it comes. The hot topic for this week is, what do the terms VR, AR, MR, and XR actually mean? Does it matter? Do we care? Who's right? Who's wrong? Where's the industry going to go? I'll tell you right now, Ian and I have varying opinions on this, as well. I mean, actually, I think everybody has a little varying opinion on it. There's been a tweet storm. If you're on the tweeters, you saw that there have been all sorts of people weighing in and giving their opinion, including myself. And I don't know, Jamie, if you did or not, but I know Ian made a comment. Heaney actually made a comment. Ian,
I've been trying to steer clear. Yeah.
I did not make a comment.
Start. You start, and then I will rebut, because I know I will.
Okay.
I'm just gonna just before you guys start, I'm just gonna go into the wall for this.
Okay.
Particular.
Farewell.
I'll just let you guys talk. See you later, guys. Bye.
Just so you guys know, before we start, though, that Paul Milgram and that whole scale and everything has been discussed. So know that we are informed on the varying standards in terms of definition. So go ahead, Ian.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll skip that. I'll skip the formal definitions and say that I guess it seems like when people are bored or have nothing, that they go to Twitter and they start discussing the semantics of this stuff. And
do they? People bored on Twitter?
Yeah, they go on Twitter and just let's argue about definitions for 3 days. It's such a waste of time to me. I've been trying to avoid this discussion as much as possible. And when Kyle brought up the idea that we're going to discuss this on the download, or what did you bring it up? I'm like, I just wrote on our Slack, because it's mind numbing to go over this stuff over and over again. But here's, I guess my takeaway is that it is beneficial to the companies involved in this space to trademark the terms or to own some of the terminology that people use. So we see that with the Windows mixed reality platform, and we also saw that with Intel's merged reality. And I begged Heaney, our studio god, to play that Intel merged reality video, because it's the worst video ever made about VR technology. It's the worst marketing of that year, and it's indicative of a time in the VR space when nobody knew what was going on, or how to actually appeal to people with this technology or explain how it worked. Like, if you compare that Intel's merged reality, so they have this video where Intel shows a person walking into a party, and this voiceover going, "What if you could stop time? What if you could jump into a pool? What if you could take a helicopter to fly away from the?" It's just the stupidest video.
Heaney God has
But
just
like,
put the link to the video in the comments, so if you look at the
yeah,
comments, you'll be able to see it.
Watch it later, though.
Thank
they
you, Heaney
clearly
God. Praise be to you.
spent millions of dollars to produce that thing, which is absolute marketing junk. But technically, you've got MR, merged reality. You've got another term for people to like turn into an acronym, and Intel is trying to sort of define, explain what they're doing. And on the flip side of that, Intel is up on stage showing their Alloy prototype headset, which allows you to have a person walk into your space and then suddenly see them inside your VR headset, and you can interact with them as if they're in that space with you, and you're able to do things in a merged way. Oh, there's my quote fingers. Ooh. Yeah, it just makes me so mad to see these companies try to own these terms and then confuse a market while people are just trying to describe this stuff in the simplest ways possible. And so I'm going to argue what's close to what Heaney was saying is that I think VR is the term that's going to win, because I think short term we're going to see VR catch on. I think we're still a few more years away from AR really catching on in a super compelling way. And mixed reality, this thing where you interact with other stuff in your environment, is just a feature of VR headsets eventually. And I don't know,
So
maybe one day we get to AR.
you think when HoloLens can do full VR as well, it will be called a VR headset?
Yeah, it's so like I interviewed Alex Kipman, the person sort of planning the headset, and he argues that the headsets will be able to turn opaque eventually.
Yeah.
And sure, but that's a lot of engineering work for a feature that I don't know if people like.
Wait,
You
what do you
want to
really?
go to a virtual world, or you want to walk around the world with added stuff in your sunglasses. You don't necessarily want an AR headset that turns into a VR headset. Like
What,
they're
you're
two
crazy. I
separate
would
use
love that.
Sure, in 20
I think
years, but
that's the
like,
end goal, isn't it? Sure, that like a standalone headset that does both is the end goal, surely.
no, but like the argument is that this is where we get to the super complicated definitions here. But you could have a VR headset that gives you a pass-through view of the environment around you, and so you've just got an opaque display that suddenly recreates the environment around you in a really compelling way. And do you really need a transparent display system to provide that? The transparent displays have such hard issues to get through. There's brightness, there's the amount of transparency, there's the occlusion, there's just a non-stop series of things to overcome to make the transparent displays as compelling as they need to be for you to like walk onto a really sunny uh, place and have fully solid digital objects represented right in front of you that your brain can't discern what's real and what's digital anymore. That's so many years away that it seems like we're more likely to have VR headsets that display your real world pass through view much shorter term. And then we've got this, VR sort of weighing people's understanding of what this technology is capable of. Like VR is the thing that people put on their heads first. It's the term they learn. I hear people put on these headsets for the first time and stumble over the words. What is this called? Virtual? Like they stumble
Yeah,
over
that's
to
true.
try to wrap their brain around it. And so there's only that they're going to learn whatever the first thing they encounter is. And that's why Microsoft is pushing mixed reality, Windows mixed reality as their term. And that's why Intel tried to push merged reality in such an
Feel like
awkward way.
I feel like it especially in Microsoft's case, it backfired there, right? Mixed reality was what they came up with specifically for HoloLens, and when it started to become apparent that HoloLens was going to take a little while longer, they kind of like tried to tide the market over with their VR stuff, which, because they wanted that term, they called them mixed reality headsets. And I remember me and you watching that conference where they announced them, thinking, yeah, but they're VR headsets, aren't they? And then I had an interview with them last year where they were like, yeah, it would be accurate to describe them as VR headsets. And I was like, yes, because that's what they are. Please stop making us call them mixed reality headsets. And I feel like they've actually like gone back on that a little bit. Paradise DK came up with a term. He would like them to be called emerging pancakes. And Dan Warb followed that up with alternate pancake mix. Yeah, that's what I got for you. Thank you for that.
Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm done. Go ahead, Kyle.
Okay. So I just want to put it out there right now that no matter what you call it, I mean, we all agree that it's cool tech. And, if we're squabbling over which letter to put in front of the letter R, that's okay with me. I mean, I'm all right with somebody who wants to disagree with me. Everybody has an opinion. As long as we all agree that it's cool tech, I'm fine with that. But a long time ago, before all of this mixed reality and merged reality and XR were even mentioned at all, we had VR and we had AR. And somebody asked me once, what's the easiest way to explain that? And my answer was simple. VR is, you have to worry about the environment. The environment doesn't already exist. The environment has to be created. You put fake stuff in a fake world. With AR, it's fake stuff in the real world. And it was easy to keep those definitions separate until all of these other tertiary terms showed up. And it's like, well, now what do we do? So I've actually gotten so deep into conversations where people are like, well, do you capitalize the X or lowercase in the XR? I'm like, if we're nitpicking this far, it's absurd. So whatever you end up deciding to call it, just understand that you're all talking about the same stuff, a rose by any other name sort of thing. So I'm not going to get too deep into it, because if you really want to know all of my opinions and stuff, go check out my Twitter. But I think the key here is that there does need to be a standard eventually. And all of you that want to say, I call it a car, I call it an automobile, I call it a horseless carriage, I call it spatial computing, I call it immersive technologies, XR, MR, AR, VR, RR, Martin. I don't know. Whatever you want to call it, just know that it's awesome. See, this way we don't have to have an argument. You've spoken your mind, I've spoken my mind, Jamie's spoken his, and then everybody can make a judgment for themselves, because it's not our job to dictate this stuff.
Well,
we just offer our
opinion.
opinion.
It finds a way naturally, right, is the thing.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, I don't think we're at the point where we will find a natural way until, all of this is worth talking about on a larger, more public-facing scale, right? And it's not right now.
Yep.
It's lots of Silicon Valley people with lots of money sitting around liking to make themselves feel really, really important by coming up with terms like XR and stuff like that. It's definitely one element of it. So
I have had hours-long conversations with folks who agree, disagree, have all sorts of weird opinions, and a lot of them are very valid. But you're entitled to your opinion on it. It's up to you. You disagree with that, don't you?
Well, I think we do kind of dictate the terms, in that a lot of people read us, and we're going to inform a lot of people's first opinions of how this technology makes sense. And I don't want to say we don't define it, but it's like we will shape a lot of people's understanding of how this technology works. And I go through this every time in our articles. If you go to our articles on uploadvr.com, we try very hard to edit them to make sure that they're right, but we have acronyms all the time. And every time we use an acronym, you are denying someone an understanding of what this technology is about. If you use API, Application Programming Interface, in an article, you're going to have some percentage of the community come to your story and go, what is an API? And sure, there might be people that look at, when you write out API as its full term, go, I already knew that. Why did they explain it? I think it's better during these early years to always spell out almost every acronym and really explain the underlying meaning of these technologies whenever possible. And that people end up arriving at these acronyms because one of you said it, where like they've got to now write a book, and now I need to not say XR or extended reality or whatever stupid term they've come up with a million times. I need to go and do it. But as journalists and as writers, the way to do it is on first reference, write out the whole thing and explain what it is. And then after that, you use the abbreviation. And I think for these next few years, you have to approach it from that perspective of explaining the term almost every time so that the people understand what you're referring to. And the fewer terms we use to do that, the less confusion there is. And we typically avoid XR and MR in our stories specifically for that confusion reason. And and then on the flip side, anytime we use an acronym, MMO, massively multiplayer online role-playing game, it's this massive acronym that just, if a person isn't familiar with video games, looks at MMO and goes, for a moment of confusion, what is that? I'm going to stop reading and I'm turned off of this technology for a little while because I didn't understand.
Because they
It's too
spelled mom
technical for
wrong.
me. That's
Right.
the worst possible thing.
Well, when we receive press releases or information from companies, when they use the terms XR and MR, do you feel compelled to
Email them back.
correct it or
No,
ask for something?
You're
yeah.
wrong.
We strip out the marketing terms, whatever, and we take the effort to spell out what we're talking about in very clear ways. We're working so hard to spell this stuff out clearly so that there's a limited amount of confusion. We had this issue with Facebook rolling out hand tracking. So they at OC6, they announced hand tracking for Oculus Quest, and we wrote our story, and our headline said, Facebook announces finger tracking for Oculus Quest or something. And I got an email from a PR person saying, actually, could you go back and edit that, make it hand tracking? And I ran around OC6 a little bit trying to talk to the engineers and understand, why do you call it hand tracking and not finger tracking? And their argument is that they're actually tracking the whole hand plus the fingers. So therefore, we should call it hand tracking. And okay, I understand that argument. And we've started going forward calling it hand tracking and spelling out as often as possible exactly what is being tracked there. But then you get to this other situation with like the index controllers. What are the index controllers doing? Are the index controllers doing hand tracking or are they doing finger tracking? Because the whole controller is tracked. You've got a tracked hand controller, but then the individual digits and their movements are tracked as well. So that's finger tracking. How do you refer to both when the index controllers actually give you real physical feedback when you're tracking all 5 fingers, but the Oculus Touch controllers only track all 3 fingers in this
My
way?
answer to that would be that finger tracking is a subset of hand tracking.
Yeah, I think that's fine. But like every time this issue comes
we're
up,
going
there
really
are PR
down
people.
the rabbit hole now.
I know, aren't we?
We do hear from these PR
Ooh.
people all the time who try to correct us, and we're going back at them to try to push back and just make sure all that matters here is clarity for new people entering this space. And when you see Windows or Intel or anyone trying to define a term, we had this with room scale. The term room scale was
right.
a debate early on between Palmer, Lucky, and Facebook, and what Valve was doing. And all that mattered was I've got outside in, another one. But I've got a very large scale space where I am fully tracked. My hands are fully tracked and I can do whatever I want and it works. And that's what mattered because at that time, Oculus, you couldn't turn around just like the PSVR. You only had the one sensor up here and you couldn't really turn around and do everything you wanted to do in a virtual space. And so we had to spell out every time, this is what the difference is between these tracking systems.
I find your opinion and your logic of why we need it to be simplified to be very valuable to the community and to our reader. Know your audience and know what they understand. And we know that we've got people who are veteran devs, who know all the terminology and know all the different cases of everything. And then there's these folks who are brand new to it. And we want to be as inclusive to them as we are to the veterans. And it's important to find a happy medium, a common ground where everybody can feel like you don't want to be talked down to. You don't want to be left in the dust and not understand everything that's going on. So we do, and I appreciate the fact that that's important to us as a publication, to keep that kind of stuff easy to understand.
Yeah.
So there's good to that. Jamie, is there any more comments, opinions?
Yeah, people are very, very interested in the topic too. Great point from Greg's VR. We were talking about subsets just then. He said everything is a subset of VR, which I thought was a really nice way of just actually then just generally trickling down. That's a really good point there, Greg's. And apart from that, yeah, I mean, everyone has their own opinion on this, which is really, really interesting. Andrew King says, "I'm glad that Upload VR cares to have this conversation," which is great. I chose one that let's just pat ourselves on the back. Pat me on the back, Carl.
Okay, here we go.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you, Andrew. Fingernail tracking is next, says James. I really hope not, because I bite my fingernail, so that would probably have some kind of horrid implication. Yeah. Vive controllers are tracking the hands, aren't they? Asked James. But yeah, but like we said, it's all different subsets, and I think subsets is actually a really good way to think of it from now on. Actually, I think that's how I'm going to change. What I thought while you guys were talking about that was, I think I've designed a really good Buzz Lightyear VR game.
Okay, that's not random at all.
I was just thinking about it, and I've got a really good one, guys. Don't worry, it's gonna be okay. It's gonna be good.
Coming soon.
You would how Buzz so we were playing Tea for Gods, and it's a bit hard to make the gun fingers. And then I thought, but how do you do anything about that? Well, if you had a laser mounted on your wrist that you pressed with this button,
that'd be pretty good. I
Yeah.
like that. It's really awkward to look down the barrel of your finger, right?
Yeah, you can't
do it. Really make sense. But doing this Iron Man style makes a lot more sense.
Yeah,
and
exactly right.
doing that's a very good argument for our violence discussion that we want to have eventually, right? Because I want to say Jeremy Bailenson over at Stanford argued that guns in VR should be different in some fundamental way from their real world counterparts. Because the argument being made that you could train or practice and learn how to do bad things with to kill people with this technology. It's one of the core uses of this technology is training. But then there's the flip side of that, like Anton Hand, Hot Dogs, Horseshoes, and Hand Grenades, arguing that there is still a massive, massive gap between what these simulations of guns are and what an actual gun is. But to your point, putting a laser or a gun on the back of your hand is completely different than the actual gripping and trigger functionality of a real gun. It would be a really fun, interesting idea to have you look down the barrel of your wrist, and it would sort of avoid that violence or training situation because nobody has wrist-mounted lasers.
I can already tell that when we do have that conversation, it is going to be the only topic we're going to be able to cover in that episode.
Yeah,
I really do think
it's a tricky subject. I mean, we haven't had that discussion yet because it's a sensitive issue, and if there's people out there that think they could add real value to that discussion, please email us at tips@uploadvr.com to sort of throw your hat in the ring. I'll talk to Heaney. I wish we could get people in here via some kind of voice chat system if they're away from their headset or can't meet us in VR, because it's that type of discussion is so valuable to have.
Yeah, we could just stick a little stick figure with a picture of their head on next to in the chair next to you. Yeah, it's going to be an interesting discussion when we do decide to do it. Last check for comments. Anything?
Yeah, talking about the gun thing, a lot of people were talking about the differences between real guns. Greg says that he went to a Vegas gun store in 2010, and a Desert Eagle kicks like a mule, which is something that getting into that conversation at some point we'll definitely be talking about, which is a really interesting point. James also says, I think the whole topic of violence in VR is interesting. The Medal of Honor news for him is something that is a point of interest, and that's that's something I'll definitely bring up when we talk about that, because I personally found the trailer that they introduced that game with to be a little on the insensitive side. But anyway, that's another episode.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I guess.
What?
I think that's enough.
What did I do wrong?
No,
You're
no,
so
no, it's
cool.
fine.
It's your cool hand things when you do this stuff and just
Oh,
like
I'm
look
seeing
out
all
into
kinds of
space.
poses today.
You've got this
Yeah,
cool
just-
like butterfly thing going on, like woo. Okay,
My legs are crossed and resting on a knee in front of my face. That's all.
it works. It works. Okay, so let's wrap this episode up here, folks. Really great stuff. We want to direct you to uploadvr.com for all of your, like I say at the beginning of the show, news, reviews, comments, and interviews. And I feel like, Jamie, do you have anything you'd like to pitch to everybody that they might want to go check out?
What are we working on right now? I still want people to go back and watch our episode of the Culture Show, third episode of the Culture Show. That was a really great episode. We filmed in Japan, saw a lot of really cool arcade stuff. Definitely a really, really fun video. Check out the 10 minutes of T for God hand tracking gameplay that we put up today. That's a really cool demonstration of what you can do with that tech. Next week, I don't feel like there's any big releases or any big things happening.
You got anything?
Yeah, just whatever unexpected things come. Yeah.
So
February.
after watching the VR Culture Show, though, I want to do this virtually, and then someday maybe I'll do it for real. But I just want to tussle your hair a little bit.
Actually, that got cut the other day, so it's not so
Oh no,
tussable right now. But
it's not tussle. Okay. All right, everyone.
Anyway,
I think that's a wrap for this week. Thank you very much for watching,
you.
and we will see you in the future.
bye, guys.
Bye.